Welcome back to the BTS Happy Hour podcast. I'm your host, Andrea. With me, as always, is Morgan.
Hello, once again.
So, Soren from CLC had an Instagram post on December 19th where it showed she posed with a bunch of friends, and one of them was wearing a mask of...
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're showing to me. I see it.
Mask of a black person?
Like a caricature of a black person. Is that what we're seeing here?
That's what it looks like. I don't know what the mask is supposed to be, if it's like a specific celebrity or it's just a mask.
Kind of just looks like a generic
large teeth.
Was it Halloween? What is the was it
yeah,
what was
I
the,
don't
what was
know
the
the context
caption
of
or
this
the comment?
post, but it was just seemed like a regular Instagram post.
Oh, so it was kind of a non sequitur out of context thing, right?
Yeah. So people saw this photo and they got really mad because they're like, this guy is wearing a racist mask. Her friend.
Well, what is the mask even about? It does look like a black person with large teeth. Okay, that's. If you haven't seen it, that's what it looks like to me.
Right.
But is it a specific person?
I don't know.
Okay. So, was there fallout? I mean, what was her comment, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, fans were angry about that, and they posted screenshots.
Which fans?
Her fan, I guess CLC fans.
Oh, okay.
And they want an explanation, and part of the problem
Her
was...
American fans, though.
Well, I don't know exactly who was complaining about it, but she had a response here that was like, said sometimes people just need to chill. I'm not stupid. So that made some people even angrier because they were like, oh, she's not even addressing it. She's just like, doesn't want us to complain.
Yeah.
But then after that, she did apologize. So, and then of course people didn't accept her apology. So I didn't know why that was even necessary to do.
Well, I mean, by this point, you know my opinion of cancel culture. I just think it's so lame. I think it's so pointless. I mean, of course, if you don't want to associate, if you don't want to listen to CLC stuff for whatever reason, that's of course you're right. But to expend your energy trying to quote unquote cancel her, it's really pointless at this point. First of all, I'm sure that the people complaining are people from the West.
Yeah,
it's not
her
my guess. Korean fans, and that might also explain a little bit of why she was not quick to react to this sort of quote unquote outrage. It's not from her core fan base.
Yeah, and I think she's probably like taken aback by it because she probably didn't even think the initial photo was racist. It's just like, oh, a guy was wearing a mask and it was like, oh, it's supposed to be funny or whatever. But she didn't see it as being racist.
No, it's just it's just the issue is that we are such a global culture that the internet moves so much faster and wider than our regional cultural biases, right? Our regional cultural values, right? I mean, in Korea, it's probably just not a big deal. Mm-hmm. That's the honest truth. And you could say that the problem is Asian countries are a lot more racist. And I would kind of agree with you. I wouldn't say necessarily it's a categorical problem, but I would say that they are, by our definitions, more racist, right? Whether it's a problem or not, I think it's more up to them because they have to live in Asia. They have to live in their society, right? Is it for us to say and impose our our values upon them and say, hey, it's a problem how you live? I don't know. I mean, if they are living and they're happy with themselves and they're happy with where their society is going, despite wearing masks like this, is it really a problem? It's a problem to us when we have to see it. But is it a real problem? Because no, from their perspective, no, right? And they're the ones that have to live in Asia. They're the ones that have to live with their regional cultural values. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's a problem. You know, values are regional. They're different. People from different regions and different cultures have different values. And if it's just fine with them, it's not fine here, clearly, but if it's fine over there, then it's fine over there, right? Just like, well, let's just put it this way. Is it fine that you eat beef at McDonald's every Tuesday or every whatever? I go to McDonald's maybe once a week, and I order something that has beef in it, right? If I go to other restaurants maybe once a week, I order something that usually has beef in it. Is that fine? Yeah, that's totally fine in America. Is it fine in India? It is not.
Yeah, and
Right? Indians will look at us like barbarians, like heathens, like psychotic people. They judge us in some way. It's not fine for them, right? They don't. Just so you know, Indians don't eat beef. It's a religious thing. Okay? They think cows are sacred, which is their culture. They don't think it's fine that we eat so much beef.
yeah, and you
Right?
wouldn't tell an Indian person like, "Oh, look how much beef I ate this week."
No.
Like, I
And
love
so-
burgers.
right. So if an Indian came in and they were offended by that or whatever, it's like I wouldn't try to stick it in their face and say, "Look at me eating beef" or whatever. But would I stop eating beef? No. And would I feel any sort of would my life be impacted negatively by the fact that I ate beef? No, because my culturally specific reality is that eating beef is fine. I live in America. We in America eat a lot of beef for now and for the foreseeable future. In India, that is not okay. Culturally, that's not okay. Well, try to apply these same things to your opinion of Koreans doing things that seem problematic, that seem racist, that seem this, and that. Yeah, they are, according to your values. But they don't live in your culture. They don't live in your society. They're not beholden to those standards, right? So it's not a problem for them. They can operate just fine wearing masks like that, which we find racist, problematic, etc., insensitive. Apparently that is okay for them, and they can operate just fine in Korea. And maybe you think that, maybe you would say that they shouldn't be allowed to do that. Or like, allowed by whom? Like, so what are we going to do? Go in there? Should the American military enforce our cultural values upon them about masks? No, obviously, that sounds absurd. Just say it out loud. That's absurd. Obviously not. Obviously, we're not going to send an army over there to say, hey, don't wear these masks or whatever. We might try to educate them and say how we think it's insensitive and say, hey, you guys shouldn't do that because maybe this, and that is culturally insensitive, and that's fine. You should absolutely communicate these things. But just like an Indian person will communicate to you how maybe they think cows are sacred and you shouldn't be eating them. Now, will some people agree with that and stop eating cows? Maybe. Sure. Absolutely, maybe. Some people will come over and say, yeah, you know what? I think cows are sacred now too, and I will stop eating them. And that would be fine, right? But a large percentage of Americans, I guarantee you, would just say, hey, I'm going to continue to eat beef because that's what we do here in America, and that's that. You guys do you in India. This is America. So I don't know. It's not problematic to me. And I totally, and we can, you look at the picture, according to our cultural values, it definitely looks very, at least, let's say, culturally insensitive. It doesn't matter. You have to judge it based on, you just have to judge it based on the context. And the context, you have to understand the context is greater than your regional cultural context. In your regional cultural context, sure, of course, it's really insensitive, really verboten, right? But it's just not in Korea. That's probably why she was initially so nonchalant about it and then finally apologize or whatever, but then not really, just because it's not a big deal to her. And I think that part of being, if you claim to value diversity and value cultural diversity or whatever, then you probably should come to grips with this idea that other cultures have just different values.
I just don't understand what is the point of sending her like 1 million hate messages. She didn't even think it was being racist in the first place. So
well, I mean, you can go
you're
ahead.
not correcting anything.
Yeah,
you're not
I mean,
accomplishing anything.
I, in my opinion, you can send her whatever you want to send her, but just know that
And she didn't even do it. It was the friend that wore the mask.
it's pretty ethnocentric for you to send it in the first place, is what I'm saying. Because you are ignoring the cultural context, which is that she's from a different culture. And you can say it's an incorrect culture or whatever, but hey, there's a lot of Indians that think you're not correct eating beef. Let's just put it that way. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, so I would just recommend if people are offended by something, just scroll by. You don't have to send people hate messages or complain tons of times on Twitter. Just if everyone could just move on, there would be a lot less like hate going around.
I'm not even going to say you need to scroll by and not complain. If you want to complain, feel free, right? Just your voice is it's the internet. Your voice is out there. You can voice it. Go ahead, do so. But just have some recognition of the idea that your values are specific to you and your context. Other people and other cultures don't necessarily share your values, and that's just that.
Just everybody in the West is just getting like way too self-righteous. Like what I think is exactly how everybody needs to think, and it's just getting so tiresome.
And even if, let's even entertain that as truth, right? Let's even say that out of some stroke of luck, all of the cultural values that we hold in the West, and not even the West, not even everybody in the West, because not even everybody in the West agrees on everything in culture, clearly. Right? But let's just say all of the more quote-unquote liberal values that are held in the West, let's just say they're all, just by pure stroke of luck, morally correct, which you can tell from my sarcasm, I don't think is the case. I mean, just even statistically, probably it's just not going to be the case. But let's just assume for the sake of argument that they are, right? Everything you think as a woke American in 2019, living in a coastal state, a coastal city in America, everything you think is correct. And everything you think about how people should behave, not just in America, but in Korea, in Russia, in all sorts of other cultures that are very dissimilar from yours. Let's say that you're just absolutely right about all of it. Let's assume that for the sake of argument. Is being a whiny bitch on Twitter the best way to convince those people to come around to your way of thinking? Is it the best way to convince them that, hey, maybe you should not wear, what masks that I think are racist? Maybe you should start to think about like these certain more problematic things. Please start thinking about these things. You want the rest of the world, and by the way, the rest of the world outnumbers you right now, because we're talking about China, India, Russia, etc. Woke America is a very small percentage of the world population. But you want the rest of the world to come around to your point of view. And like I said, for the sake of argument, we're going to assume that you are actually morally correct about all of your viewpoints. But is the best way to browbeat them over the internet? Is the best way to act like an entitled brat and say, you guys are just awful. You guys are just awful. I'm right, and this, and that. You're awful. Apologize. Is that the best way to convince the other side? Which, by the way, still represents a majority of the people on Earth. The other non-woke side. Numbers-wise, they're a majority of people on Earth. Is the best way to convince them to come around to your way of thinking to just act like an entitled brat? I'm not even saying the way you think is wrong. Do I think that her friend should be wearing like a caricature of a black person's, a mask that's a caricature of a black person? Ideally, no. What do you have to gain from it? Surely not much.
Well, okay, my issue is like, what's the difference between that mask and like mask of a white person that's also a caricature? It's like, that's not racist. That's like, it's just a different mask.
Yeah, and that's a fair argument. But even if you're correct that, hey, this mask is racist or whatever, I think that people on the internet and in the West, they are lulled into this idea that they're more powerful than they are, and that they're the more moral majority and the numerical majority. And most people should agree with us or do agree with us. They don't. You are the minority, and you have to convince a large number of people to your way of thinking. And you know how they say you attract more flies with honey, right? So just be nicer about it. Don't be so antagonistic and pointing your finger in their face.
Apologize now.
Yeah, you're not going to do that. That's not going to be effective. Let's just talk about what's effective. That's not going to be effective. You know why? Because they're the majority and you're not. Why would the majority listen to you if you're going to get on your high horse and be a brat about it? If you're going to, browbeat them about it on Twitter? They're not. They're just going to resist it. They're going to get resentful, and they're going to say, who are these entitled people in America talking about all these things and using these terms that we don't even understand? We don't care about what they think. In fact, now I resent these people from America, and I'm probably just disinclined to agree with anything they say. I'm just going to be against them the second they open their mouth. Is that what you want? Do you want people to just, the second you open your mouth, they feel negatively about it? No, you want people on your side. You want to convince them. You want to persuade them. right? And you don't do that by, I don't know, just being a whiny brat. That's the best way I can describe what people come off as. They're just entitled, whiny brats. Everybody else needs to think the way I think. Hey, I don't even necessarily disagree. I think that the world probably would be a better place if everybody was a little bit more sensitive to other cultures, other belief systems. But you lecturing them from a position of weakness, from a minority position, is not going to do the job. You are a minority position. You are lecturing people in a majority position. You're not going to convince them. And you're not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish, which is to convince people to be more mindful, more respectful, more sensitive. You have to just be nicer about it. I'm sorry. That seems like just a strange thing to say. Like, why should I try to be nice and try to convince these people they're racist or whatever? Like, hey, because you're the minority, man. I mean, these are the majority of people on Earth. They don't necessarily agree with all of your, enlightened point of views. So, yeah, you got to be nice about the way you go about it. Has to be diplomatic. It has to be nice. You have to convince them that, pragmatically speaking, your position's strength depends on how many people leave. If most people on Earth are not on your side, then you have some work to do to convince them. And probably the best way to do it is not by being a dick to them. The end. And that's not what they're doing in this situation. So, I have no problem with them trying to convince people to come to their side, but you just have to be realistic and pragmatic and, try to be persuasive with people.
On the topic of dealing with criticism, there was the H3 podcast situation from December 9th. And basically what happened is there's a podcast called the H3 podcast, and it's a YouTube podcast, so it's video. And they were doing some kind of countdown of songs, and BTS video was on their countdown. And the one guy, Ethan, was saying, I don't get BTS thing. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't like K-pop. I hate K-pop. I don't get BTS. How did this thing become a thing in Western culture where these grown men and little girls are jerking off to K-pop boys? It's like a little fetish. And then he asked Ian, the intern, for his thoughts, who said he doesn't like it, but that he gets why people do. And then Ethan reiterated his point, saying how weird K-pop fans are, and then joked that people will probably try to assassinate him for what he just said.
That they tried.
And then, and then after that, I saw a clip of this video of the podcast was going around on Twitter, and then a hashtag started, the H3 is over party. You know how they always do, such and such is over.
True, but it wasn't.
So that's just another situation of how people are dealing with criticism. And I think the fans didn't really, they should have just ignored the whole thing. But they kind of, that's what I was going to do. I was like, okay, another person who hates K-pop.
Right,
who cares, whatever. But I feel like people gave it more...
Well, he is a big YouTube personality.
Oxygen, and they grew it out of proportion to what it actually happened. So, he doesn't like K-pop or doesn't get K-pop. It's like, okay, well, who cares? So then the H3 is over party was trending on Twitter, and this is on December 8th. And story didn't end there. He kept on tweeting, and he had a lot of responses back to K-pop fans that were criticizing him.
Okay.
So
I saw all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I watch H3 sometimes. I'm not the hugest fan, but I'm familiar with them and I watch them.
What kind of podcast do they normally have? Obviously they're not talking about K-pop all the time. They're just.
They just have a podcast where they talk about all sorts of things.
Just like pop culture kind of things.
Yeah. They didn't start off as a podcast. They started off as a YouTube channel that did, what do I want to say, more like reaction videos to stuff. And most of the reactions were negative, suffice it to say. But funny, they're not they. The guy, Ethan, is funny. I don't know what the wife offers, but whatever. He's funny. So his response videos to things is what really got them famous. And then, I don't know, people can say they got lazy or whatever, but they do more podcasts now. They don't do YouTube videos. So I saw the original comment they made, and I also saw the follow-up video they had, their quasi award show about it. Yeah, I saw it.
They had
What did you think about it? What are your thoughts about it?
before that, they had a bunch of, or I don't know if it's, I guess Ethan is the main person who's doing all their
He
tweets.
is.
And then he was laughing about how he was trending on Twitter about H3 being over. So he just thought that was funny. And then he was like, my message to K-pop fans, lighten up, nerds. If you can't handle your hobby being made fun of a little bit, then you really are just a bunch of little girls jerking off to K-pop boys.
Well, I think I agree in that most of the things, I mean, that's his goal, right? He wants to be trending. He just wants people to react to his stuff. People who tend to be controversial, that's what their end goal is. And so if they get trending because they have been controversial, they view that as a win. That's just the reality. They view it as a win. I'm sure that a lot of people who've never heard of him, I've heard of him now, and not all of them necessarily, have a negative opinion of him, because I'm sure there are some people who saw the trending on Twitter and they said, oh, some guy's hating on K-pop. I don't know who this guy is, but I also hate K-pop. So they probably, probably have a positive opinion of him. He probably gained some viewers due to that. And you might say that he lost some viewers too, but probably not as much as he gained, to be honest with you, because his audience probably doesn't overlap terribly with K-pop viewers. That's just my guess. Don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So just pragmatically speaking, net positive, he probably did gain viewers. It probably was a win for him. Got notoriety. I mean, anytime you're trending like that on Twitter, you're getting attention.
Well, that's why my initial reaction was like, oh, just ignore this whole thing and it'll go away. But it seems like people just kept on commenting and they kept on saying stuff to him, and it was like not really helping, because they were just like, oh, you're racist, you're this and that. And it's like, okay, it really wasn't about that. It was just, you guys are just throwing like any insults out there, and that really doesn't defend K-pop at all.
I mean, based on just surface reading of his comments, I don't think he was racist, although I think people could be forgiven for thinking that it might have been racist, because he did imply certain things like, BTS is gay, it's for gays.
The whole thing about like, they're jerking off to like young K-pop boys, it's like the American pop stars, it's like always focused on very youthful people, and they're sexualized. It's like the same exact thing.
It is the same exact thing. But then also, I'm not sure that he would necessarily deny that, right? I mean, when he was put on the spot, he said that groups like NSYNC and whatever were pretty much the same sort of thing.
Like, I literally saw a Britney Spears video the other day. She was like completely naked in it, basically. And it's like, we did the same thing. So I think some people were offended that he made it seem like, oh, well, K-pop is like that, and
yes,
other things aren't.
And if he meant that, then of course I feel that's factually incorrect, because that's not a dynamic that's specific to K-pop. But if he, acknowledges that, these Western pop acts, trade on the same sorts of things, and that the same sorts of criticisms could be brought against an NSYNC, a Britney Spears or whatever. If he would acknowledge that, then at least that would be fair. You couldn't say that, oh, it's a race thing. But, when people are just commenting, when you just take a 10-second comment, there's not a lot of context to it, right? So I think that in further episodes, he did acknowledge that, and you could say that this was just to cover his ass or anything like that, but he did acknowledge that he felt the same way about, like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and groups like that, which would mean it's not a racist comment. He just doesn't like boy bands. He doesn't like that whole vibe, and there's a lot of people like that. They don't have to, people don't have to like it. And especially think about his genre, which is kind of a salty person commenting on stuff on YouTube, on a podcast. They're probably going to have opinions like that. But so you're right. I think we cannot assume, I don't think it's fair to assume that it's necessarily racist, although in a vacuum, I could see how you would think that. Because he just made a comment that, oh, this is just not BTS is just not masculine. So maybe he's trying to say, you wouldn't be wrong. You wouldn't be so off base to think that maybe he was implying that Asian males are just not masculine. They're quote unquote gay. But he didn't say that specifically, right? That was sort of an implication you could read into what he said, absent clarification. Now, he did give clarification later that would lead one to believe that he just sort of believes this about, boy bands and things like that in general. And if you take him at his word, then fine. Then that's not a racist thing. He just doesn't think, he thinks boy bands don't fit sort of traditional masculinity, and he thinks that's a bad thing. And you can go ahead and disagree with him about that. That's perfectly fine. There's plenty of people who agree with him, and they don't think traditional masculinity is bad, and they don't react well to any group that sort of subverts traditional masculinity. But then, hey, it's a free market. It's a free world. You consume the stuff you like. He consumes the stuff he likes. He can comment whatever he wants to comment on it. Whether it's racist or not really depends on whether you believe his follow-up contextual addendum or not. Because he did offer an addendum that where he said, I don't like boy bands. Okay. Based on what I know of him, which is, just from listening to him here and there, I don't think he's a racist. I think he's what do you call it? I think he's a curmudgeon. Not only because that's kind of what he naturally is, but also because that's sort of his shtick. That's what is the character that he plays, and that's what sells. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. Probably, if you don't agree with it, the best strategy is to just sort of ignore it. Because what difference does it make what this person? Okay, so he thinks BTS is gay. He thinks that it's just a fetish.
Well, the thing is that was annoying is like all this negative comments he got. Then he turned that into material for the next show, and it's like, okay, well, that really didn't help the K-pop fan side of things.
Well,
he just
gave
him material.
Right, you just gave him material. And here's the thing you have to learn about people who are what's the best way to say it? Here's the thing you have to learn about people who just don't give a fuck about what you think and who are intelligent. And whether you agree with like his shtick and the whatever incendiary stuff he says, he's a smart guy. He knows how to like push buttons. He knows how to push his stuff. He's a very popular YouTuber. He knows his stuff, okay? Here's what you have to understand. You can't beat them this way. You're not going to win in this sort of war, okay? This war of like righteous indignation. You're not going to win that way. He's going to beat you because he doesn't care what you think. And when people don't care what you think, you are robbed of all of your power. All the power of righteous indignation, it loses its power when the other side doesn't care. He doesn't care. He only cares about the attention it garners and how many clicks he gets from it. And he got so many from it, he wins. Honestly, I'm not sure that it wasn't some sort of mastermind plan. If you watch the show, it really was just 10 seconds where he just rags on K-pop. Because he honestly just doesn't like it for whatever reason. Whether you think it's racism or maybe it's just he feels that it threatens traditional concepts of masculinity. Whatever it is, it was 10 seconds of him ragging on it, and that's it. Trust me, their podcast goes for hours. He rags on all sorts of things for 10 seconds. I mean, here, right now, I will like make off-the-cuff statements that are offensive and, ragging on whatever I feel like for 10 seconds. And it will happen.
I feel like you've said more about Ed Sheeran than he said about K-pop.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's not some sort of like master plan either of me thinking, I'm going to get these Ed Sheeran fans riled up and maybe we'll get views. No, it's just my honest opinion. And I'm pretty sure that's what he was giving, an honest opinion. Now, do you think that honest opinion is motivated by, he's threatened, he feels like traditional forms of masculinity are threatened, and that threatens him somehow. He feels some kind of way about that. Or maybe you think that he really does have racist, latent racist views about Asian males, and he's applying that to whatever the case is, okay? The best way to combat that is really just to ignore it. It is just to ignore it.
It was like they were just looking at a countdown of songs of the year or something, and it was like BTS was somewhere at the top, and it was like, I don't like K-pop. I hate BTS. Whatever.
Yeah, and I don't get it. I think it's just for, girls, who have a fetish for like, hey, this sounds like this is the type of thing I would say. It's just an off the cuff. This is just what he thinks about it. I don't think it's that premeditated. I don't think he's thought about it, in depth. I don't think he's out to get them. I don't think he has an agenda. At the end of the day, he's not. I mean, he's a big YouTuber, but he's not important. He's really not important. He only became important because you made him trend. Really. I guarantee you that a lot of people heard of him first time because you made him trend.
And then one of his tweets was about, he had that meme of like the rage guy, and then he had a mask with the fan cam screenshot in front of it. Like the K-pop fans use that as a weapon, but they're angry.
Yeah, okay.
But the thing is, I don't even think they use it like that. They just put the fan cams everywhere, like no matter what it's about. Like they're not trying to like argue with people. He also tweeted that kind of like blamed K-pop fans for all the suicides that are happening. And it's that's really like oversimplifying it, because there's like we had a whole episode about that. It's like, okay, it's the whole culture.
Yeah. I don't think that everything he says is necessarily accurate. That was just
maybe that was just a jab at.
That's just a jab. That's just like when you get into an internet argument with people and you just like dig out all the shit you can dig out. Like, well, what about this that you guys? Oh, okay.
Right.
That's not
like
true,
he's not trying to do like, oh, here's my 10 points that are serious about why K-pop.
Or they may even be serious, but it may even be a serious point on his part. But I feel he's factually incorrect on that point. But people in internet arguments say things that are not quite correct all the time. And I think maybe he just said something that was not totally rooted in fact. He was in a Twitter argument. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've been in a Twitter argument, right? I mean, we all like to think that every single time we're in a Twitter argument, every single one of our responses is so well reasoned and so well considered and factually correct and, bulletproof. But that's not true. We probably just sort of talk out of our ass sometimes, right? We probably just say some things. Some of them pretty correct and some of them not so true. That's everybody on Twitter. That's human. So this is one of the things I feel like he just sort of dug up that sounded correct, but in closer examination, I don't think, K-pop fans are responsible for people killing themselves. This is, like we said, it's more of a systemic thing in Korea. And, totally unfair to lay that at the feet of, a fan base.
Yeah, I mean, he was just tweeting stuff to like keep it going and keep trending,
right. and probably to keep it trending, probably keep the passion going. That is again, just don't engage with people like this. That is probably the best policy if you don't want them to win, because by all accounts, by my accounts, he won. Before all of this happened, I'm not going to say it was nobody. He was absolutely somebody.
Well, after the Twitter stuff happened, then I think it was their next episode. I don't watch them regularly or anything, but apparently their next episode was about how they got canceled, and it was like a celebration, and they had all these like birthday props and like
I saw it,
and hats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually kind of funny and it made me laugh. And they had all these like, the whole room was decorated with like BTS posters, and they were wearing BTS t-shirts. And I mean, I don't know if BTS was who they had in mind when they made their comments initially. Maybe
yes, it was.
Okay, but then
he was specifically reacted because it was the YouTube Rewind.
But
and
the arguments were all about like K-pop. But then I don't know, like it turned into like just being about BTS.
Oh.
Kind of. I don't know.
I just think that with this type of person, the only way you can win, I even hate to use the word win because it's not. I mean, you're not trying to win. Just live your life in a way that is, improves the quality of your life, which is winning in a way. Okay, so the only way to win against people like this is to not engage with them. And I'm not even saying that he's just a troll or this and that. He's a human being like you, and he's trying to do his thing. He's a successful YouTuber. He said some stuff. He has opinions. I have opinions. Not everyone agrees with them. You have opinions, and not everybody agrees with those opinions. By you, I mean anybody listening to this, anybody on Earth, okay? But you're just not in the position where you're famous enough that it's going to trend like this, right? But if you want to quote-unquote win, And by win, I just guess, I mean, your energy doesn't contribute to his success. Because you don't like the person's opinions, I'm guessing you don't want to contribute to his success, correct? Then just don't engage. Don't engage. Like jumping on Twitter and, trying to cancel them or this. First of all, you can't cancel them. They're an incendiary podcast. They say edgy stuff all the time. You're not going to be able to cancel people like that.
I do think in this follow-up episode that they did, they kind of approached it in a more humorous way, and they apologized at the end, even though it was like a funny apology.
Did they really? I don't know that they did.
Well, he had like 3 fan cams playing behind him, and he was talking about...
He wasn't really serious. But that's the thing. He's not really serious about anything.
Yeah, well, my point is it wasn't like... He could have just kept it going and said even more stuff, but it's like that was just making it into more of a funny thing.
Yeah.
And there was a part where he was talking about he's not racist because he does find BTS attractive and he would have sex with them, and that kind of comment.
That was the type of thing he would say. See, they're not... They're just that edgy type of, it's an edgelord type of show. And I don't know, if you're not used to that, if you're a very uptight person, of course, that's going to just come across generally. It's just super offensive. But it's just that's the type of show it is, And if you don't want to engage in that and if you don't want to contribute to its success, totally fair. That's fine. But the best strategy is to not engage with it. Engaging with it and making them trend, that's feeding right into it, I've got to tell you. That's feeding right into what he wants, which is more attention, which is more clicks, which is more everything.
Yeah, and if any K-pop fans watched that follow-up show that they did, I mean, maybe you've decided to cancel them or whatever, but if you did watch it, you would see it was like it was pretty humorous. And it was just like it was lighthearted. It wasn't like, oh my God, I hate K-pop. And I mean, he's just wrong on the suicides thing, but it's like he's just not aware of all that. Thank you to our guest, Morgan. You can find BTS Happy Hour on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeartRadio, and now on YouTube. New episodes are weekly. Be sure to comment, review, or rate in the podcast platform you're using. Follow us on Twitter @OurBTS, @HOURBTS. Until next time, this has been the BTS Happy Hour. Thanks for listening, and remember, make every hour a happy one.